Hi everyone, John here from Strong, Happy, Healthy, Loved, and I hope you're doing great. This week's podcast, we've got a very special guest by the name of me. So, Carl's going to step in as the host with the most, and we're going to have a conversation around the ideals of mental health and what my experiences have been, where I started. So, trust you'll enjoy this conversation. Thank you for tuning in.
Okay, so John, the script is flipped today. I'm in the host seat and you're in the guest seat. So John, welcome to SHHL podcast, Strong, Happy, Healthy, Loved.
Good to be here.
Thank you. How are you feeling being in that seat today?
Look, this is good. It's nice sometimes to get out of your, what's say, a comfort zone or whichever side we're on. It's just nice to see the perspective of opposites. So, and looking forward to seeing you in the host chair. So, this is something exciting for all of us.
Yeah, thanks, mate. And outside of that chair, who are you outside of SHHL?
Gosh, good question to start with. Who am I? Look, I'm learning that every day. I've got to the point where I've let go of a lot of the titles or ideals of who I believe or think I am. It's wonderful to get to a place in my life where I just feel comfortable in whatever role I am as dad, as partner, as a facilitator, or a student, teacher. So many opportunities to just be involved in life in so many ways. So yeah, it's a good life.
It is a good life, and it sounds like you're a teacher in many ways as well. So it's awesome to have you in the company doing this sort of stuff. So take us back, John. Where did you grow up, and what
Grew
was
up
it like?
in New Zealand, little town called Nelson, top of the South Island, a little Sleepy Hollow. And for all intents purposes, a good upbringing, and yet probably didn't provide me with enough to do. I got myself into a little bit of trouble with the law, you might say, at 11 and 12. I was quite the entrepreneur in all the wrong areas, and yet that certainly supported me later on. I work with at-risk youth now, and having something to relate to. It's interesting how everything clicks in. But yeah, good upbringing, and my single mum, dad wasn't in the picture. Older sister, and into sport, and finding ways to be creative and involved in some way, and yet there was a lot of areas of low self-worth and not being good enough and what's wrong with me, and I was weak, and yeah, it started this journey of self-discovery.
Yeah, yeah. You mentioned you're into sport. What sort of sport was that, John?
So back then it was soccer. From the age of 5 to 12, I thought soccer was my go-to, and a little bit of basketball started to come into there as well. I enjoyed the team part of it. I was definitely the aggressor. I was playing striker in soccer and wanted to score the goals, and wanted to be and get all the accolades. There was a lot of need for approval and acknowledgement. I realize now, looking back, how much I wanted to get noticed. That was my thing, because so many other areas of my life I didn't feel enough, but on the sporting field I was certainly good
Mm,
enough.
sounds very challenging. And what do you think would be a one of your biggest challenges in life so far?
Acceptance, learning to
Mm,
just accept who I am, and what is and what's meant to be. I've definitely challenged the narrative about what's true, what is real, what's illusionary. I mean, I've gone down certainly a lot of rabbit holes. You and I talk a lot about the perspectives of potentially what is real or not. And a lot of people I get don't aren't not interested. And yet for me, oh man, imagine if that's true. Imagine if that's true. What if this happens? And so very strong mind. And my biggest challenge is learning sometimes just to accept and calm the mind, not get so involved, not be so intense or passionate. That's something I'm tempering as I get older.
yeah, I know the feeling. I'm very passionate myself, and I know all these rabbit holes. I've been down all of them quite seriously, and I've sort of have a different perspective on life these days. I try not to let that sort of stuff rule the way I think in normal life, because really, if you take care of your own bubble, that's all that really matters at the end of the day, doesn't it? So, knowing all this now, John, if you could give your younger self some advice, what would that be?
Yeah, I like that question, and I've heard a few answers over the years. The first answer would be, hey, keep doing what you're doing because this is where you're going to get to. This is who you're going to turn into. And I guess the other question would be, don't stress so much. It's going all going to work out. So don't get so involved or caught up with all of the potentials. Follow your heart, all those questions. And look, if I would just spend time watching. One of the things I like doing with my kids is watch them when they don't know I'm watching. Because as soon as they know I'm watching, potentially I'm influencing their behaviors. So I think when someone doesn't know that you're watching, you can see a real true test of what their focus is on rather than being, I know when the camera's on. I know I'm now going to talk differently, act differently because there's some external focus that I'm playing with. So I think you get a true test of someone, don't tell them anything. Just let them go.
Yeah, absolutely. I know what you mean with the camera eye. This is all very new to me, so um, even watching myself and how I behave and how I think I behave, it's all, it's not what you really think sometimes. So you got to just go with it and have that positive mindset that, that's what sort of goes into it, makes it a wee bit easier, I guess.
Mm.
Um, what with the company, what does strong, happy, healthy, loved mean for you these days?
It's a great mantra. I'm a big fan of words, as you well know, and I think when you use words as a template, I mean, we've looked at the ideas of cymatics, and you put the sand on the metal plate and run a vibration through it, and they'll form different geometric shapes depending on the frequency. So for me, picking good words, having a really good solid foundation, strong, happy, healthy, loved, all those things accompany those sort of four corners of a foundation. So I really like the fact that each one of those is a whole discussion in itself. What strong means to me, what happy means to me. So it's like when someone sings a song. I don't know what that song, how that vibrates with them, but the fact that they're singing it and feeling that it's their song, great. You do whatever you want with that. So for me, it's a foundation, it's a platform from which a lot of things can be birthed for me and promoted. And each one of those within itself, they're all great ideals. Being strong, being healthy, being loved. I mean, that's a big one. You get into the ideals of love, loving, lovability, and it's very intriguing how that takes you down a person's ideology.
I know what you mean there with that loved one, especially. I actually even struggled to say the word out loud for many years, and I didn't even really say it very often. It was a hard thing to me for me to talk about, but over the years and my experience as well, it was because I was scared of what would happen if I showed it, I guess. So it's that people get scared of the unknown a lot of the times rather than the actual thing itself. It's not that you're scared to jump out of a plane. It's you're scared of what's going to happen after I jump out of the plane. You don't know, so it's that whole
I don't
fear
think
of not
people,
knowing.
the idea of loving the idea of it. It's the idea of, I think a lot of people know love and they want to be loved, but are they worthy of being loved? I mean, what sort of love has been shown to them? And I know I had a very loving mother, and that was something that I was very grateful for and appreciative over the years that I had somebody there that supported me and showed me love in all of its ideals, rather than I look at some people's ideals of love and it's very distorted. And it's not to
Mm,
say it's not the ideals, but to be loved, not to say that you can be loving, but to just to accept. And if I can love myself, if I feel loved, the potentials of what I'm able to achieve is really far reaching, that ideal sits within me and not that I'm searching for it or I'm wanting it or desiring it. It's there. And that's why I think you put that there at the
mm,
end, just to shore up all those other areas. Excuse me.
Absolutely, and I've found out, there's a lot more to love than what you think. That there's um, feelings that are associated with love that you think could be love, but there's also lust, and then there's attachment. So those are things that you have to think about as well when it comes to love. It's a yeah, they write poems about it, they sing about it. It's a very fascinating thing when you look at it. It's a whole subject by itself, I suppose. Have you personally had any mental health issues in your life, like anxiety? I would imagine that would be something if in your line of work. How, can you talk more on that, John?
Yeah, absolutely. So didn't know mental health growing up. It wasn't something, growing up in the 70s in New Zealand that people were kind of focusing on. My mum certainly had an idea about all the ideals of emotional well-being and things like that. I didn't feel good enough. I didn't have a dad growing up, and so lacking that overarching sort of father figure, I was seeking some type of support in that regard to show me. And so I felt weak. I didn't have these, where was the strong pole that was supposed to sit on either side to complement that. I had a very strong mother. And I think as a mum, you can be nurturing or you can be the disciplinarian. It's very hard to be both, as we've seen as parents. And so I've struggled as a single parent sometimes to find, am I going to be the nice guy or am I going to be the one to, so I lacked that part of me, come on, John, have the discipline, stick to it. So I floated around in a lot of different variables and why am I like this and what's wrong with me and why can't I be better? And it didn't really, like I said, in the sporting arena, man, I was tenacious and I wanted to prove how good I was. But that was an act. It was about the doing, not the being. So a lot of
Mm,
my mental health has been around accepting who I am, being okay with my sensitivity, realizing that I don't have to prove myself as a performer in the stunt industry and acting. And it's easy to act. Well, it's not easy to act, but if I've got a good character that I think is worthy and I invest in that, and if people then want to find out what's behind that, oh, just that was scary for me. So relationships were tough because I didn't allow people to see the real me. I was just putting up a very good front. I think men are very good at having the shield to work behind and be strong and be resilient and be a man. And yet, what if I don't feel that? It really, I've only felt like a good man in the last 5 or 10 years that I can remember.
mm,
So yeah, that anxiety, those feelings of low self-worth, and they say fake it till you make it, and then
mm.
you're still faking it. So I like the idea now, faith it till you make it, and believing that there's something there to work towards, as we still do every day.
Absolutely, and even having faith in the pace that we're going as well, I think is a big one as well. Now, you mentioned there acting and stuff like that, and superheroes and things. I know your background because we've known each other for a number of years now. But do you mind telling the audience about this acting and stuff you were just talking about briefly before?
Absolutely. So I got into bodybuilding at around 15 or 16. I was inspired by the ideals of muscles and feeling that we talk about the strong, happy, healthy, loved. I like strength. I thought strength was a really good quality. If you were strong, if you looked powerful, I liked He-Man. I liked Superman and the Hulk. They were all these incredibly strong and heroic figures that could get shit done and save people. So I thought, hey, what a great kind of role to step into. So in 98, doing security, a guy cut out a newspaper clipping and it was like to go to movie world and do you aspire to be the next Arnold Schwarzenegger? Do you have the physique of Superman and Batman? I thought, oh, well, so that opened a door for me. And so I got to run around the park in these superhero costumes. And part of me was like, man, if only I had the powers to go with this look, as we talked about the performance and how wonderful it was to stand there and have your
Yeah.
picture taken with all these people and seeing the kids and how much they looked up to these ideals when you're Batman or you're Superman and that look of like, oh my gosh, like So to see some of that, still not feel it, and yet it started this process of getting roles to play. And then I went to Japan as the Terminator, and I've played these military guys, and I've played other roles that when you dress up and get a chance to kind of perform this opportunity on a big stage, it's quite exhilarating, and you're getting paid, of course. And well, that's a great job. I don't have to go to work. Um, I'm just going to get paid to dress up and play characters. And now the best character I get to play up and dress up is me, which is easy now. But it's taken all of those kind of processes along the way to learn how to be okay with the inner world and not just play with this outer shell, and just, they say clothes maketh the man, but my skin and my representation is who I am, not what I'm wearing or the car I drive or how much money I have. They're all external drivers.
Mm. Yeah, what's inside really matters. That sounds really exciting and exhilarating sort of stuff. What do you do to mentally stay grounded during that sort of?
One of the
Yeah.
parts of my process that I realized that I needed to come to terms with just regulating my mind. I started out in security from the age of 18, and then standing in these positions of, the bouncing and all these ideals, and the challenges that came with that. As an 18-year-old, I didn't have the confidence to go to a 30 or 35-year-old man and say, hey, listen, it's time to go. And if
Mm,
he said, no, I'm not going, in uncertain terms, was I then capable of forcibly being able to remove this person or use those skills? And that was confronting. That was scary. And I realized how much I needed to grow as a person and overcome my fear limitations that you can't do this. What if something, and I was the worrying all the time. I was a worrier. And I've
mm,
turned that now into a warrior, and yet very similar. There's only one letter difference between worrying and worrying, and
mm,
learning how to come to terms with accepting that what is courage is facing the fear and doing anyway. So for me, the greatest mental health attribute was learning how to deal with the fear that was inside of me, those inner voices, the lack of confidence and competency. And then I realized the more I did something, the more I started to track with another step and another step. Oh, look what that revealed. Oh, gosh, that's interesting.
mm,
I had to grow into myself. There was a little part of me, like a seed, and I couldn't fill the hole with anything else except learning to grow this part of me and then grow into myself and learn
mm,
to grow that distance. And that's the breathing that came with it,
mm.
regulation. And after a while, it might look like I'm calm, might look like I'm handling my pressure, and yet underneath, the little duck feet are busy churning away.
Yeah, that's the thing. Nobody ever knows what's going on in someone else's head unless they've got some sort of magical powers. Like you can have feelings and things like that, but you never truly know of what they're thinking or where they're stuck. What if they're stuck in the past on something, or they're worried about something in the future, or it's an interesting one. These are the scars and the battles that we fight on the inside, I guess, that sometimes aren't really so evident on the outside. And you mentioned there with all your acting and stunt and stuff, and it made me think of a few Robin Williams and people like that were externally pretty happy, but who knows what was really going on in the inside, I guess. So, and that's the thing, we've got to be able to reach out and talk to people because you'd be surprised. This is one thing I've noticed in my journey is you'll be surprised the people that who you think would be interested don't care. They just care about themselves. And then every now and again, there's these people that you really sort of surprises you about. They genuinely care about your mental well-being and things like that. And when you stumble across those people in life, I think that's a really um, it was a rare thing, but I think these days it's becoming a bit more known that things going on the inside, but also there's the invisible vibrations on the outside of how everything, you know, aligns itself in this world. So, um,
Come without a cost. And you talk
yeah,
about Ron Williams, you talk about people's gifts, and yet sometimes the gift is the challenge. The
mm,
gift could be the sensitivity of how much it's taken them now to get it out there, and it was exhausting for some people to go up on stage. I know there's been, I think John Waters, struggle with alcoholism because to get up on stage and then perform and have the crowd and the instant response, and then that's it, the show's over, back to the dressing room and just sitting there, the silence was deafening.
mm,
And so a little drink, something to, and so this is where I see a lot of people who would get up and are strong in front of people may be the ones who have the biggest struggles internally because now what? Now what do I do? And I realize for me, the boredom is where I find myself struggling when I'm not doing something now, and so I'll look for ways to get involved or distract myself or make some phone calls or now what do I want to? I get very restless, and that in the past has taken me down some very interesting experiences of which now I realize it was important, but at the time very reckless, very
mm,
dangerous. I'm just glad
yeah,
I can still, and I can accept people for that. And part of being a facilitator now is realizing that every person is going to go through something. And I cannot tell my kids, hey, don't do this or avoid this because they're not going to have any experience. But I can become a reference point. And yeah, Dad said that or John mentioned that. I'd like to know more about it. So if we open a door for people, I can't walk you through it. I can just talk to you about, hey, once you get into that room, here's some observations, potentially, if I've been there before you. And that's why I think we stand on the shoulders of all the people before us to provide us with some concepts and ideals. And I think that's where you and I are at now of offering something that we feel very excited and passionate about. Hey, we can't fix it. Here's some ideals. Here's some loving support.
absolutely. And just to talk about its healing in itself, if people can, you know, feel more comfortable about talking about their own things. You mentioned before, reckless. Whenever I hear that word these days, I sort of think of myself. A few years ago, probably not even a few years. I'm probably reckless every now and again now, not as much as what I used to be, but when I look back on myself doing those behaviors and stuff like that, I think uh, it was all learning lessons. That's for sure. I'm alive now to talk about it, but if it was my own daughter behaving like I was, I wouldn't be too happy. But that then opens up the reason as to why I behaved like that, and that was two reasons. I didn't have respect for myself at the time, so I didn't. So that was a self-respect thing. So I guess I wasn't loving myself. And the other thing was I didn't realize I had ADHD also. So I was constantly chasing dopamine hits, that dopamine thing, and that's why alcohol's not good for people like me because it sort of increases that. But no, it's good to touch on all that sort of stuff, John. I think if you had a message for people who are struggling right now, what would that be?
Embrace the struggle. It's a cliche, and people are avoiding potentially sometimes their stressors or the fact that it becomes the suffering, and that's essential for our highest good is to some way to suffer. And we go to the gym, lift heavy weights, break the muscles down to make them grow. That's in some way of suffering. If we want to get fitter, there's suffering. If we want to go on a diet, there's a certain amount of suffering. So when I see struggle, and probably the best analogy is the butterfly. And look at how the caterpillar goes in, makes itself the chrysalis, liquefies itself, turns into a goo that then rebuilds itself into this incredible being that when it breaks out of its chrysalis, and we might look at someone and go, "Hey, I'll help you. Let me fix this for you." The butterfly will die because it hasn't gone through the necessary struggle to make the wings enough to break out of its current paradigm. So, that to me shows that the butterfly is about transformation. And without the struggle, without the suffering, we won't transform. We won't be able to transmute some of those experiences to come into our reality. So, again, it's not to say, hey, you got to suffer. There's needless suffering, and then there's positive suffering. And I'm at a point where I can recognize that everything I'm going through, even if I'm angry and I'm frustrated, there's a part of me that recognizes something good's going to come from this. And that's a focus that I work on. So I think people need support. And I've got a good support team around me. I've got people I can talk to. I've got a great partner. I've got great friends. I think a struggle for people who feel lack of, they don't surround themselves with positivity. They don't see they're worthy of being helped. And that's the biggest challenge. How are we able to crack some of those? If I'm telling you, hey, you're good enough, and you're telling me, but John, I'm not. I'm useless. I'm hopeless. I'm a lost cause. I can't argue with your truth. All
Mm,
I want to do is keep supporting you, keep showing you, keep looking, keep going through this. Don't get comfortable in your place of struggle. It's a journey to continue on with. They say it's darkest before the dawn. They talk about the dark night of soul. All of this is there as a human uh, concept to keep us looking forward. I mean, even getting older is a struggle. Dying is going to be the great struggle. So it's interesting.
yeah, I find it fascinating too, and I think it's changing paradigms and the way you look at things as well. You mentioned struggling. I have my own version of the way I see it. I sort of look at it as a bit of a yin yang type situation. So more it's uncomfortable. When I'm uncomfortable, I know I'm going to be there's going to be up and up at some stage, and it's almost like the more uncomfortable I am, I almost get a little bit excited sometimes about how great it's going to be when I'm being grateful the next time I'm being grateful about the way everything played out, because it goes up and it goes down, and that's life, yin yang, you know. But if we didn't suffer, I guess, or have these uncomfortable moments or these black moments, well, if everything was perfect all the time, there would be nothing to be grateful for, because you wouldn't have suffered to be feel grateful for it anyway. So um, it's it's part of life, and and it's not designed to be perfect. I guess it's a lesson to learn lessons. We're here to learn lessons and to work out ourselves. Really, we're the makers of our own universe, nobody else. So, you know, that comes into a lot of why are we so worried about the way other people judge us when this is our show. We're essentially the main actor in it, but we're always so concerned about everybody else. So
I love the
it's
saying, life's not a puzzle to solve, it's a mystery to
yeah,
live. And I think so
uh,
many people feel that they're going to get, when I get this, then I'll be happy. When I have this much money, when I have, this body or this partner. And so if we're going to do the carrot and the stick, that ultimately we're never going to be satisfied, because if I don't have it now, when I get there, I'm still not going to have it. No matter what it is, it's going to be fleeting. And I think that's for me. I was very much success driven, and to get the bodybuilding trophies, to get win in basketball, and be recognized, and recognized for what? For playing a role. It doesn't bring that happiness. And we talked about that behind the scenes, that sometimes the very strongest among us are the ones who are struggling the most. And,
mm,
the people who might be telling me that they've got the best story of how bad their life is. Well, there's a difference between being a victim and having a victim mentality. I've seen plenty of people who have very challenging lives, and yet the courage they show me, the resolve and the persistence to get through that, And yet some people I see have all their physical limbs intact, they're neurologically they're okay, and they're telling me there's something missing. Some people don't have the ability to change their physicality. They're born like that. They're going to struggle with that, and they accept that more readily than people who get given sometimes a challenge, and that's where they're going to sit with it. And again, it's not a judgment from me, it's an observation that I see there's a big distinction than feeling like you're not good enough and actually having something to show you you're going to have your life like this forever. So accept that. And again, I
Exactly.
come back to my acceptance of myself.
Exactly, John, and that's why we're creating this podcast to bring all these uncomfortable conversations to a surface and hopefully get more people like yourself and me on here to tell some stories and how their own journeys and their life and the little things that worked for them or didn't work for them. But at the end of the day, it's about the positive results that we get at the end of it. So it's been a pleasure having you in the hot seat today, John. Have you got any final words you want to say?
I don't know, the final word, that sounds kind of terminal, doesn't it? I mean,
Yeah.
I like being inspired, and it's amazing where that potential can come from when sometimes out of the darkest experiences comes the most beautiful sunrises, and sometimes when I see great struggles and I see someone get that experience, it comes into fruition. So if I get to be in a position to be of any use and support people and offer words of wisdom, or just the fact that I can sit here and someone might tune in. I mean, I've done that so often in my life. I mean, if I get a bit down, I'll watch something. I'll watch somebody singing a song, or I'll watch some comedy, or I'll watch some sport, and I just see such beauty. I see such magic and such grace and tenacity that it just shows me it's there everywhere. And just because sometimes we might have lost a bit of mojo with, that's not forever. This too will pass. I think that's the message that I see, is that I've looked at all the things that I want to do and how long it's taken me, and yeah, I should have been better, and that's still not good enough. And it's like, it's okay. I've got time. I've got another day. I've got more opportunities to keep growing into this person, and it's not done. There's no, oh man, the older I get, the better I was. I let go of all of those negative terminologies, and I catch myself hearing myself speak and move, and I'm going, yeah, I'm gonna do something with that. I want to improve that. I'd like to grow here, and I'd like to learn more about that. And I give myself time. That's the gift that I'm able to do now, is that time is on my side. I'm not running out of it, and people are willing to give me more of that, and I want to give myself more of that. So the message, this too will pass, and time's on your side.
Excellent, John. Well, it's been a pleasure having you on the show. And no, they were not your final words because you're the host and you'll be hosting the next one. So that was my whirl in the hot seat for a go. Also, I'd just like to remind everybody we've got the Strong, Happy, Healthy, Loved t-shirts. I'm wearing one now. They're 100% organic cotton. They're double stitched. They're really comfortable. And the 22% of the profits are going towards mental health organisations such as Beyond Blue and the ADHD Foundation. We'd like to support these and obviously make a profit so we can keep doing these podcasts and get more stock to sell. We'd like to see hats and hoodies and yoga mats and drink bottles and all sorts of stuff in the future. So, but we've got to sell some t-shirts to do that as well. So,
Mantra, vibration. Once you're wearing those things, hey, why not wear the things that we wish to embody?
yeah, that's right. They're cool colours as well. So thanks, people. That was me being the host.
Well, Carl, thank you.
John will be doing it next time. Thanks, guys.
Much love.